And we're live. All right, Teo, welcome back. We're now at episode 9, and I'd like to start us off with just saying thank you for everybody who's been there with us since day one. Lots has changed. We have 100 subscribers now.
Multiple platforms.
Well, yeah, across
over
all platforms.
1,000 on TikTok. We're
over 1,000 on TikTok.
We've made it, I think, in some people's perspective.
In some people's perspective.
You know what we just watched, which was interesting? We were watching a clip from episode 1, and it actually related to this, and it was talking about the statistics around podcasts, and said, like, didn't we say it was like there's 4 million podcasts, but only 400,000 actually make it past like episode 2 or something? And we were like, if we can make it there, we've done something. And now we're at episode 9, so we're like actually getting into a rhythm, and I feel like the more we grow, and the better we'll get, and the better we get, like more of a small percentage we're going to get into. So episode 9, we're out of the first hump, but we're still growing. The podcast is still ever changing, it feels like.
We are slowly trying to slither our way to the top.
Yeah.
You know, just working through, doing what we do, staying authentically us, and not being bought out by corporations. Yeah.
And that's the big thing. I do think it has to be authentically us. Like, if we do grow or don't grow, like, who knows if anyone ever watches this? That's not the important thing. Like, stay authentically us and grow organically, like the way we would. We're not going to do things just to get clicks. We're not going to, like, do all that. We're going to speak about things we care about. And I know we've kind of shifted where I'm not going to say we're less business-centric, but I think we're more like ideas and topical now. But who knows? I think it's gonna keep changing. I think as we continue to grow and we continue to figure things out, there's gonna just be a difference from episode 1 to episode 9 and episode 9 to episode 30 and all of that. Like, as we continue going, it's gonna continue changing.
We're going to talk about whatever we think is relevant, which is going to be things that are, they're not shenanigans necessarily. They're going to be serious, generally serious topics that have to do with all types of things that we talked about, like business, you know, not trying to be political, just talking about, like Ateo said, solutions, right? We may talk about issues, but we will also try to bring our thoughts on potential solutions or alternatives.
And I think that there's so much, and this isn't even a topic, but it's funny we're going here. I do think there's almost like, there's like two, like everything you look at, there's always two perspectives on it. And I think the more you can kind of like say, it doesn't have to be this or that. You can look at things uniquely, or you can look at different topics that aren't the main ones, but still require people to think and like act on them. Why isn't that important? Why can't we talk about stuff that's not what the mainstream is pushing, but more individual things we care about, but also generally, I would say everything we've talked about up to date, even though our comments have maybe had some surprising added elements in there, by and large, they're universally accepted ideas.
Our comments are wild.
Our comments are
wild. People are like, yo, shut up.
Yeah.
They're like, get rid of the suits, kids.
Yeah. And they be going at each other. There's like, you'd think that it'd be like one group watching it, but I think the people who are commenting on it, they're like getting an argument somewhat, or like they're looking at the same clip and they're getting two completely different like takeaways from it.
Yeah, if you're watching this, we are not trying to create division. We're genuinely trying to just speak about things that could make the country a better place. You know, we're not trying to cause division. We're trying to think of free thought that pushes forward businesses, the government, anything.
Individuals.
Yeah. You know, we're trying to be a positive outlet of ideas.
Yeah.
You know, that's why we've invited certain guests that do things in the business realm, because they're just people trying to make a living using different resources.
And they're making an impact. And that's what I think it's always going to boil down to. Whether we're talking about topics or the people we're interviewing, are you thinking about things that is making an impact in a positive manner? Not that it all has to be touchy-feely, but it's like, are you actually doing something that's changing the world in a positive way? Or are you looking at something that you think would make the world better, as opposed to just being negative and criticizing or tearing things down? Like, that's the one thing I'll say, and I'm not trying to like bash on our comments, but it's been very interesting for me to watch, is that the comment section, which is kind of the feedback from the people, has been by and large negative. And I think people think about things in that manner right now. They're just kind of like, they feel down, they feel tired, and they feel negative about certain stuff. And if your perspective on how you think about stuff really dictates where things go. So anyway, none of the topics we were talking about today, but very interesting to see episode 9 versus where we started, how things have changed over time.
Things have changed, and everybody who's been with us since the beginning, we appreciate you. Last time I checked, we had like 140 subs on YouTube, and like maybe like 180 on IG, and yeah, probably 1,300 on TikTok. So we have slowly trended up, and we appreciate everybody along the way. So yeah, why don't we just get into some of the topics we've thought that were things we wanted to cover.
Yeah. So so I think when we were talking about a few things, we have a few topics, but one of the ones we wanted to kick off with was talking about corporate donations, specifically tailored towards like the political realm. So I really like how we've been doing research. So is there anything from your research that surprised you? Because I actually had a few things when I was looking into it. I was like, I didn't know. I knew it was going on, but I didn't understand how it was going on. And I feel like that's what I learned a lot about. So what were your takeaways, or even your just general thoughts on corporate donations making political contributions or donations?
Yeah. I found out that there's most of the money, from my understanding, comes from political action committees. People often refer to them as PACs. From my research, I saw there's about 4,600 PACs, and a certain amount that wasn't super clear on what's considered, but like from that 4,600 group, there's what's considered a super PAC. And then the line is kind of blurred on how many super PACs there are. But these are a lot of groups that kind of not just donate money to different individuals that are running for Congress or in Congress, but they also, they do other things, it seems like, to help with different campaigns and to keep people in office. Is that kind of what you were
I went a different route in my research, but that's super interesting. Like, so I didn't know the number of PACs that are out there, and I think that ties into what I was looking at. And I'm putting you on the spot, but did you find through your research what the difference between a general PAC and a super PAC is? Is it a monetary thing, or is it like what's the difference? I don't know. So that'd be helpful.
Yeah. So let me just read. I had it written down what the definition of a PAC is, but you know what? We can just Google it with our independent fact.
Can you, fact checker number one, or just say what is the difference between a PAC and a super PAC? Because we know they're political action committees.
Yeah.
So they're working towards driving political outcomes. One thing I found super interesting: corporations didn't have the ability to do the types of contributions they were doing in the way they were doing until 2010. 2010, I found where it was Citizens United versus Federal Election Commission. That's when things really started changing. I don't know if you saw this in your research, but in 2010, based on a Supreme Court ruling, that's when corporations could really start to make more direct contributions, whereas previously they had to either kind of funnel it through PACs or they were like, it was the individual stakeholders making the donations. But in 2010 is when they could start making more direct funding, as well as, did you ever read into the thing that was called dark money campaign committees?
Yeah, so the dark money campaign is, when corporations donate money to tax exempt organizations and they're not required to disclose their donors, which kind of shady, a little shady.
Yeah, let's break that down. So a corporation is making donations to committees, tax exempt committees, mind you, and they don't have to disclose it. Like, that's crazy.
It could be anybody.
But don't you think that, like, I guess let's take a step back. Why would a corporation not want to disclose what they're doing, donation-wise, to political campaigns? Like, let's just actually get into it. Why do you think they're trying to hide it or not disclose it?
It could be one of the things, and it came from my research I thought was very interesting. It could be because they're funding both sides. That could be one thing, right? Because some corporations can have political statements that kind of lean a certain direction, which will make maybe their employees think, oh, this company aligns with my values. But then if you follow the money, it shows that corporation is actually funding both sides.
Hold on. Eugene told me we had the fact check. So keep that thought going. Eugene, you found it. So talking to the mic and then tell us.
It says super PACs are independent, expenditure only political committees that may receive unlimited contributions from individuals, corporations, labor unions, and other PACs for purpose of financing independent expenditures and other independent political activity.
And you said there's unlimited funding towards them?
Unlimited contributions from individuals.
So is that the difference between them? Is that super PACs have unlimited contributions, whereas regular PACs are capped?
Yes, but I think it's saying from individuals.
From individuals.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay, so now we're kind of breaking it down. Super PACs are just like the behemoths of them. They're getting unlimited contributions from individuals, so there's no real regulation on how much they get, and then they're getting all this funding and they're pouring it into certain political groups. And then at the same time, you're saying, well, what would these corporations be contributing to? And you're like, one of the reasons they might want to do it is so they can fund both sides. Why don't you keep building on that?
So if you look, and I looked it up on the internet, there was an organization, it was like a .org that broke down the, like if you look up, Eugene, you can even look this up, like super PACs, like how much their donations are, like what side they fund. You can kind of, I don't know how you want to put that in Google search, but it'll show you, there's an organization that tracks, it's like a .org that tracks where super PACs throw their money, Democrat versus Republican. And if you looked at like the top, I think it was like top 20 super PACs, it'll actually be very interesting to kind of see how much they fund the both sides pretty equally. And you, like, for example, I remember seeing one that was like AT&T, and you would think maybe AT&T may lean a certain direction more. But if you looked at it, I think they funded it almost equally. It was like 50 point like something versus like 49 point something to get like 100%. But it was like, they're almost funding each side exactly the same.
Why do you
this
think
was like 21 and 22. Well, it's like you're betting on the house. You know what I'm saying? The house never loses. If you fund both sides, no matter who wins, you're gonna come out on top. You know, because if the money is coming from certain organizations, and we've kind of touched on it before, it's not like for sure you're gonna do what that company wants to do, but you know that they fund you. You know they give you a little money. You know, that's not to say that necessarily sways any congressman, but you know they donated. You know what I'm saying? Like if you had a GoFundMe, if you got injured and there's someone you didn't really like, but you saw that they gave you $500 for your recovery, or if you were like whatever, like you may still not like that person, but you'd be like, man, they gave me $500 when I needed it.
And I think that's, I guess where I was getting at is like, okay, so that's why corporations, I think it's pretty simple. Like the first question is, why are corporations in the first place wanting to give political donations? And they, based on what you said, they'll fund both sides because they don't care, because they're trying to be the house and win either way and be in favor of whichever group is in party or in charge. That makes sense. But then I guess the next logical question is, why is that allowed?
Why is that allowed? I don't know. Very good question. Who stands to benefit?
Yeah. Okay. So we have corporations allowed to donate to politicians now. And we said they're doing that because they want to gain the favor of the politicians making the decisions. And now we're having politicians receive funding from corporations, which means the politicians are now able to win and get in power. And they have to, you scratch my back, I scratch your back, or at least keep in mind the fact that these corporations are benefiting them. So from what it sounds like, corporations making donations helps the politicians get in power they want to win, and then the politicians now are looking favorably on corporations. So the two people who come out ahead in this are corporations and politicians. So who stands to benefit? Corporations and politicians. Who do you think loses when these things are happening?
Constituents, potentially. I don't know. It's hard to say. You know what? I am also interested. How many people donate individually to political parties?
That's a good question. And aren't they capped? I know they're capped. I actually know that for a fact. You're capped as to the maximum donation you can give as an individual to a political candidate individually. Now, I know you can kind of circumvent it with the PACs and the super PACs like we were talking about, but individually, if I say politician A I want to contribute to, there are spending limits they put on you. So do corporations, and that's something I didn't actually look up, and I wish I did. I guess if they're giving it to super PACs, that's not capped. But are corporations capped? Eugene, can you look that up?
What exactly?
Are corporations capped to the maximum contributions they can do? Or are they the same treated as if they're individuals? Because here's the thing I was getting at, and I'm kind of thinking about this live stream, but it's like, okay, so, and I even kind of was here, but I'm realizing it more. So this was allowed in 2010. We're saying corporations benefit because now they have influence over politicians, and politicians benefit because they're getting funding from corporations, which give them a higher probability of winning, so they owe the corporation. So those are the two winners in this situation. And you said the constituents are the losers, but it's like, if they're funding these dark money campaign committees, so the corporations aren't disclosing it. So at first we answered why they'd want to do it, but now they're doing it. But why are they hiding it? And it's negatively impacting the constituents potentially because you're actually contributing to a politician that your constituent may not agree with. These corporations have more power than an individual. So yeah, that's why they're losing. And what about employees? What if you don't agree with the way your corporation's donating?
Well, you're just an employee.
So who in the is a good question. Who in the corporation is the one actually making the decision?
Who's to say in the corporation? It would probably be maybe like a board of director, right?
Is that who does
A
it?
CEO. Oh, I don't know. If you're asking me, I don't know. I would assume so, right? Who makes those decisions? You know, who?
I don't think board of directors make the financial transaction decisions. They might give influence, but the person who's actually running the donation, that would have to be a group in the company. A board of directors doesn't say, hey, here's our profits, give this much to a politician.
So what group?
Do they?
What group?
That's what I'm asking. I don't think we've gotten to it.
Yeah. No, it's not sure. But every company might also have their different process of doing that. I don't know if there's one way to make those type of decisions.
Well, one of the things I found interesting was that each state in Virginia has a different definition.
Each state in Virginia?
Or sorry, each state in the U.S. has a different definition of what is the role of a corporation. For instance, Delaware, it said that the definition of a corporation is to make a profit, whereas Nevada has a wider definition where it says you need to consider your stakeholders, all of your stakeholders, in what is best for the company. So if a corporation in Delaware is profit focused and a corporation in Nevada is stakeholder focused, they might have different methods of how they determine who they're going to contribute to. So I think it comes down to your state as well. But at the end of the day, why are corporations doing this at all? Like, we get why they're doing it, but why do we allow it? Who, aside from the corporations and the politicians, who would be in favor of that? Do you think citizens are in favor of corporations making donations?
Yeah. It also makes it hard for people to run if, like, you don't have that backing. You know what I mean? It kind of makes it appear as if, it almost makes it appear as if the corporations are really controlling who's sitting down to represent the people.
I would say they have a huge influence over it.
If I wanted to run for an elected office and I didn't have the backing of a corporation, how would I go about raising money? It would be very hard to go up against, you know, the amount of money I would have to raise. For example, like, I was looking it up, and, you know, this was 2022, but the amount of money, and I'll pick somebody that a lot of people are aware about, but like Kevin McCarthy, from the PACs, in 2022 he raised about $1,700,000. It was like $1,700,000, $758,335. And this is according to it was like one of the .orgs. We can probably look it up as well if we want to, but it's one of the .orgs, and that's how much money he raised from
So
PACs.
1.7 million.
Yeah, but I will also actually put this. This is an interesting stat. Total, he raised $27 million. So, That's just a lot of money in general. But let's just say 1.7 million off of straight political action committees. That's a lot of money. That's a lot of money, and that money is used for all types of stuff, travel, you got to have a private jet, you got to take a slow train, you got to be able to Uber. It can be exhausting traveling a lot. You need about like 1.7 million to get around. Yeah. And also some of the other things that you do, but that's a lot of money. Little old me, if I was going against Kevin McCarthy 1v1 and I didn't have that corporations behind me, I'd be taking a fat L,
Yeah, and I think politicians have talked about it before, like, are you bought out? Are you bought out by the lobbyists and the corporations and all of that? And then you look at something like that and you say, okay, call it 1.7 million and you're getting that. There's no way those corporations don't have influence over you. Like, they talk about it all the time. And this is on both sides of the aisle, that what are your donors doing? How many times have you heard that? What do your donors think? What do your donors want you to do? And your donors are, in theory, who are the largest advocates for you. But if the largest advocates for you are corporations, what does that say? What do the corporations want you to do? I don't think that's how a politician should be making decisions. Why would you care what a corporation thinks at all? You're a politician. You're representing people. You're representing your constituents, the literal humans who live in your jurisdiction. So why would any corporation, whether they have a store there or not, have any influence over you? And the type of store, I can guarantee you that your mom and pop, small business owners aren't making large contribution to political candidates. They don't have the money to. They're just trying to get by. So if you have individuals and small businesses not really making a lot of contributions or small contributions, and then these huge corporations, which you actually aren't part of your constituents, making large corporations, why do they have any influence over you at all? The point is that you represent your community. So if large corporations are giving you a lot of money, they're not part of your community. Why are they influencing you at all? Why is that allowed?
I don't know.
Okay, so you tie it back to Citizens United versus Federal Election Commission, and maybe I need to do more research, but I don't agree. Supreme Court got that one wrong in my eyes. Why would the Supreme Court? Maybe we need to follow their readings, but why? What would, not knowing the case, how could you see the Supreme Court justifying corporations being able to make these donations?
Only thing I can think of is, corporations can have a voice too.
Why?
Why not?
Because they're not individuals. It's a collective of employees and all of that. But why would
people organize in order to say things? Sometimes they're political statements. Sometimes they're, different types of things. Like organizations get together, like political organizations get together and make statements. Corporations get together to make other statements. I think it's about freedom of expression. And I think that may have been why they did it, but I don't know.
Yeah, sure. And I know you're not arguing for it, but to me, looking at it at face value, I guess it goes back to what we were talking about, what the state defines the role of a corporation is. But me personally, I think the role of a corporation has nothing to do with making political statements or political contributions. They should be focused on other things, and maybe that's another conversation of what are the things that corporations should be focused on. But I can tell you what they shouldn't be focused on, which is having influence over politicians. Like, I get how it's in their best interest, but it's not in the citizens of the United States of America's best interest. It's in the corporation's best interest.
Yeah. I think that's something that it's only been around for, what'd you say, 13 years?
Yeah, 2010 is when that really shifted.
Sometimes things will happen and we'll see the results of these things and we will, maybe undo it or make certain adjustments. So, what would be a good adjustment to that? Just completely take it out? Are you a...
Yeah, I think so.
Just completely take it out?
I think you separate it, You have separation of church and state. Why don't you have separation of corporation and state? It's... The state is the individual. Any institution should not have influence over the state, because the state is just the people.
But
People have influence over the state, but institutions should not have influence over the state, because
But-
that means they have influence over the people.
But I think it might make sense to let corporations talk to senators and House of Reps sometimes if they need to explain certain things to them, like if they're not as knowledgeable, right? Like, for example, actually, let me not use that as an example, but different organizations, if they're working on something that has a specific, it requires a specific type of knowledge that only those type of companies really have, they might need that type of lobbyist to explain why their business is essential and has to have laws to protect that type of industry, right? Maybe there's a law that's coming up where the politician may be hurting that industry and they're not as, well informed, and the companies can more inform them, because then where else are they going to get their information from about certain industries?
Just one quick point of clarification. I'm not saying that they shouldn't talk. I'm just saying there shouldn't be a financial relationship between them. What does, like we just saw the thing about AI happening, right? They brought a bunch of experts and corporation leaders about the AI discussion. I'm fine with that. If they need to tap into industry experts, I think that is a responsibility of a corporation to be able to provide that assistance. But for the corporations to fund the politicians, no, I don't think that has any relation at all. You can cut off all of the money flowing into the politicians and still at the same time have no impact on the corporations contributing in, being thought leaders in the space and giving information. Information and finances are two separate areas, and I'm saying stop the corporate donations and keep the assistance going. If they're doing that, that's great. We should be utilizing our corporations. The corporations shouldn't be taking advantage of the politicians and the people.
I agree. Totally agree with you on that. Well, that being said, I don't have too much more left on this topic. Do you have anything else that you wanted to run by on this topic?
No, not really. I think there's a lot of follow-ups that I would do based on this conversation. I really want to learn a little bit more about certain things because I admit I'm not an expert. But I do think at face value, just using common sense, thought on it, I don't see a good justification for why corporations are allowed to make these donations. And I think that aside from the fact that it benefits the politicians and the politicians turn around and benefit the corporations, there is no benefit. But I also at the exact same time say, how do you stop it who would be in charge aside from the judicial system to stop it? Because everyone else is incentivized to keep it going. The politicians aren't going to stop it. They're getting funded. And the corporations aren't going to stop it. They're the ones that are doing it to get influence. So you would have hoped that the judicial system was the one to stop a unethical relationship between corporations and politicians, but based on the Supreme Court ruling, they allowed it. So now I'm looking at corporations sideways, I'm looking at politicians sideways, and I'm looking at what is the Supreme Court thinking when they do this, because they've opened up, in my eyes, Pandora's box for corruption.
Yeah. One thing that did jump out at me is how many millions of dollars political action committees were giving to different candidates. Kevin McCarthy was just one candidate, but if you go down the list, and here's the other thing about the list, most of them were incumbents from this list. Most of these people were people who were sitting. They were all getting millions. I didn't see one person.
Was
on
it
the
pretty
list.
evenly divided between Democrats and Republicans? Or was there a skew one way or the other?
It looked pretty even.
Wow.
It looked like everybody's getting the money.
So it doesn't matter if you're a Democrat or Republican, they'll fund you.
Isn't it weird how that's part of the political game? It's like convincing companies to give you money. Like if you're running a political campaign, if you have someone who's in your ear, that's one of the first things they're telling you. They're like, you got to get that PAC money.
Yeah.
You got to get this money.
You want if you even want a chance at it, you got to get that PAC money.
Like
just to get a shot at it.
Tell them what they want to hear.
Yeah.
Tell them what they want to hear. They
sell out.
Do what you got to do.
In our system, if you want a real swing at it, currently, I'm not saying it's the only way, but the most common way is to sell out to corporations. You want a good chance of getting it, you need a certain amount of money. How are you going to get that money? Easiest path, I'm not saying it's the best path, but the easiest path, sell out. Go to the corporations and take their money.
Yeah. Not necessarily sell out, but just kind of let them know.
Sell out. Sell out. If you're taking large corporate donations, you're a sellout. I am willing to go that far and say it. It might not be a popular thought. I don't know how it's controversial, but I could see it's controversial. But if I look at a politician and they've taken large corporate donations, to me, you're a sellout.
Even if you've voted to what your constituents want?
Yes. You have I guess it comes back to the realisticness of it. Like, we can look at the reality of the situation versus the ideological way it should be. But ideologically, a politician should be taking $0 from corporations and only serving their constituents. Reality, maybe that's the only way you win. I don't know. I'm not that deep into it. It seems like they're all doing it, so clearly there's a reason why they do it. But from the outside looking in, you're all sellouts. You're taking money from corporations to get your seat, where you don't have to theoretically, but you do it because that's how someone, like you said, someone probably got in their ear and they started doing it and they were like, well, if you say that's the only way I can do it, I'll do it that way. And then there's the people who try to do it the other way, and it seems like if they don't have the money, they get beat. It's corrupt. Another corrupt rant, but it's corrupt. We deal with a corrupt political campaign system. And I think everyone knows that. Come on. We're acting like this is some big revelation.
It's legally corrupt.
It's legally corrupt, but it's corrupt. Very, very corrupt. Legally.
like they're allowed to take that money. Don't get us wrong. I think most of the money they take.
Most of the money. I mean, like, you know, not,
there could be money we don't know about.
I don't know the last politician to go to jail for it. I mean, you hear about, I guess, a little bit, but most of them, that whole list you said, like how many of them have been investigated for it? I know it's monitored somewhat, but it's monitored for, are you doing something that's corrupt? Like, it's kind of tough to go to jail for your political contributions because it's so dang corrupt that, like, you can do it. It's allowed. Be corrupt. We're not going to put you in jail.
Yeah, I was looking at some of the stuff that they spend money on. It's just kind of funny. Hold on, I might have wrote some of that down.
You were mentioning planes and Ubers and stuff.
I was looking it up and essentially like some of the expenditures were like planes, you know, like trains, buses, anything to do with like transportation, and then like, you know, rallies, giving money to like grassroots. I mean, there's a lot of money that goes into running a campaign, like a strong campaign. You need some paper, you know what I mean? Unless you have an insane amount of volunteers, which, you know, damn,
who's doing that?
Who's doing what?
The grassroots.
The grassroots?
Yeah.
You'd be surprised. They get a lot of like high school and college age kids to like convince them, hey, we're fighting for real issues. We're fighting for real issues right now, and you are going to make a difference. Get out there, knock on some doors, tell them to vote for our boy who you've never met, and I promise you, America will change one way or another. And then people spend 7 to 8 years in that before they realize, damn, it's a scam. I just spent 8 years getting paid very little, volunteering a lot, working really hard, and then, you know what I'm saying, the congressman is a sham, you know?
They're taking, you're doing all of this effort and time. It's almost like a mirage, where it's like they're making people seem like they're doing all these activities that are really helping their local politician or their congressperson or president or whatever get elected. You really need to be part of it. While at the same time, that's all happening on the surface, and in the background, millions of dollars flowing from corporations. You know, they're like making phone calls being like, will you donate $5 to our political candidate, or can you give us $50? And like, they spend hours a day. Let's say you were the best political campaigner ever. You got 100 people to donate $10, right? You made $1,000, but you got 100 people in one day to donate $10. At the same exact time, a corporation in the background being like, $1 million.
these politicians raise $27 million and ask college kids to work for free.
We work for free and ask other citizens to give me as much as they can. Squeeze them for as much. If they can give 10, take 10. If they can give 50, take 50. If they can give 100, they're like a great donor. And these hardworking Americans are like believing in the candidate enough to give 100 of their hard-earned dollars, or at the same time that corporation they gave that citizen the money to make that hard-earned $100 just shelled out $1 million.
Dog, when you think about it, there's politicians who are worth more than $50 million asking college kids to knock on doors for them for free. For free. They're like, go knock on doors and for free. Go talk to people for free. Go post on your social media for free. Go intern for free. I don't want to pay you a single dollar, but I'm going to go on a cruise with my family, take pictures for my Instagram, benefit off of all of these things. I'm going to boost my stature in America, make money, but you're going to work for free, college kid. Isn't that nuts?
It's crazy.
You know?
They could think of how many politicians could probably self-fund themselves and they choose not to, while at the exact same time asking people to do exactly what you said. Just do it all for me for free. Believe in me.
Dude, the fact that not just do they get these donations, not just are they rich, but then they have the audacity to ask these college kids, hey, go work for free. And then they send out like postcards be like, donate.
Yeah. They want everyone to give them something. And what are your candidates giving you? Like, really?
This kind of bleeds into our next topic, but I'll say this. It's so funny. They'll do all this. They'll raise all this money. They will be worth millions and millions of dollars. And some of them don't ever pass a bill. They didn't pass
They're
one
not even
single
doing
bill.
the job right.
Not
No one's... Isn't like public sentiment on politicians like we don't trust them? Like, it's like they do polls all the time and no one trusts politicians. They're one of the least trusted groups and they're in charge of all the tasks for America. They're doing a terrible job because they can't pass any bills, and then they turn around at the exact same time. They're like, you don't trust us, we're not getting anything done, but can you give me a donation and then vote for me? It's like, what? And we keep doing it. Incumbents get elected all the time. We're like, yeah, do it again. Give me another 4 years of you being terrible.
Our Americans are hilarious because they're like, I don't trust all of Congress, but my guy's good. My guy's good. The guy we elected, he's solid. You know, at least that's what 51% think.
I don't know. But that's a really good transition into a topic we were exploring, which is in today's day, I'm not talking about all time, but in today's day, in the current environment, in the current climate, is it even worth it to be a politician? Is that the best? We talk about civil servants. Is being a politician the best way to be a civil servant in today's day? What do you think?
I would say in America.
In
today's day, I don't think so. Just because, like, if you want to make America better, a lot of times as an individual, the best way to do it is as an individual, right? Like, volunteer, serve in your own community, help your neighbor, be a good person. You know, if you're an older person, mentor. If you're a younger person, be respectful. You know, try to be a positive influence around you. Like, those things at a micro level can affect a lot of people at a macro level, you know? And then, like, if you become somebody who is a little more on the more fortunate side in terms of the wealth, you can use that to influence a lot of people. And I think in some ways, like, directly influence people a lot better than if you were a politician. Like, a lot of people think of a lot of the big name politicians when they're thinking about politicians, but there's, like, I believe it's you know, there's well over 400 congressmen. I think it might even be like 500 or something like that.
No, I think it's like, you can look it up. It's like something between 450 and 500.
Yeah,
I know
something
that.
like that.
It's like
But
460 or 470.
Look up.
How many
people are in Congress? Because that's House and Senate.
well, yeah, well then it's over the 500 because
that's
it's
what
like
I said.
Senate is 100 and House is like 470,
Total of 535.
530.
35.
So
In the House or in both?
both.
In both.
In both.
Yeah,
So
so-
that means there's 435
No,
House.
Senate. Yeah. So there's 535 total Congress members, and I couldn't name probably more than 20, more than 30. You know.
Yeah.
And if you think of it at that level, it means that there's a bunch of nameless people out there who run the country, and you probably know somebody in your community who makes a big impact on your life. So I think if you want to make a bigger impact on the world, you know, in a positive way specifically, being a politician is not the way to go, you know, because if you're a politician, if you're really going to make an impact, you have to make waves. And sometimes making those waves aren't in the best way, you know, because you're doing something either controversial and kind of makes people give you attention, or you know, you've been there so long that people just keep hearing your name pop up over time, and you're becoming older people. You've been in there 60 years not getting anything done. You've been in there 6 years complaining, or 60 years complaining, and you're just an old head in Congress. And, you know, you may not have ever passed anything that has changed the country for good, but if you had spent that 60 years in your community, getting involved, trying to make it a better place, one could argue that would have been a better, that would have been time better spent in your community doing something good for those around you, you know, rather than part of Congress and not really being a part of anything. You know, the only thing you really ever did was vote one way or another. Not that I'm mitigating that, but you know, if you're voting for a bunch of stuff, but none of it ever gets passed, or you're just spending all your time doing things that really don't make a huge impact, you could have spent that time in your community, you know, even with your own family. You know, a lot of the biggest influence you can have is with your family, helping your family become better people, whether it's your brother, your sister, your wife, your kids. All of that, I think, could be better served.
I agree. And I think the question is, if you could be a politician, why couldn't you impact your family and your local community and those things? And I think that that's where the theory behind what the position of being a politician is, like, it in theory would be the most possible influence you can have. If you can do all these things, you can influence your family, you can influence your local community, and you're on a national stage doing what's best to represent your local community, that is how you have impact the most people. But I completely agree with you in the sense that looking at it from the lens of today's society, like, there is this establishment that everyone talks about, but no one really wants to even like look at and saying, like, what is the establishment? And the establishment is this overwhelming trend to move certain directions that may be contrary to what people actually want. And I think that that's where you lose value as being a politician now, because even if you did go in and you influence your family, you influence your local community, and you're like, I want to influence the nation based on representing my people, you now have to go up, and if what is best for your people doesn't align with what this establishment, quote unquote, is doing, then you don't have as much actual possibility to make change. You'd have to beat the establishment. And it's like, how do you do that in today's day? We know there's an establishment. Everyone talks about the establishment. We don't really have a great definition of what it is, but politicians either get in line or they're seen as troublemakers against the establishment, and the establishment kicks them out. So what can politicians, you either make it a career path, and you're like, hey, I'm going to join the establishment, and then I can ride this for a number of years, like all of these senators and Congress people that we see, and they're like, hey, I'll join the establishment, I'll profit off being a politician, and I'll do what the establishment says. Or you try to do what's actually best for your candidate or your constituents, and you go against the establishment, and they kick you out anyway. So I don't really know how a true, honest politician in today's day can be successful. It's either fall in line, or we're going to get you out of here. So I don't think being a politician actually is a useful use of your time. Not because it's not a good ideological thing, but because you're up against literally something that, how do you beat the establishment? Whatever that thing is, how do you beat it? And what is it?
What would you do differently?
I think what I would do differently is not be a politician. Like you were saying, you can impact more people in your direct sphere, like you're saying, your brothers, your sisters, your wife, your children, your parents, your neighbors, your cousins, your community, all of those things. And I think what's different about today's day versus other times is that ability to impact people directly has widened. Your voice can be heard on wider channels, on wider platforms, so that you can, maybe not directly in the sense of you're like shaking hands and like actually meeting these people, but you can reach a wider group of people and share positive thoughts and share whatever message you're trying to do via platforms today versus having to use the political channel, which is corrupted. We've talked about this in 10 different ways, whether it's congressional trading, congressional political donations, congressional age, all of these careers, all of that stuff. The political system has been corrupted. It's rotten to the core. So if you join it, like I said, you're either in line or they're going to kick you out. But if you're actually impacting not only your local community, but you're like really trying to change the American people directly and say, we're going to circumvent the political system in general, that's what I would do. I would say use your voice and become a person of influence outside of the political sphere, because if someone is at this point trying to go the political route and they don't have an established like, I don't even know what you would do. I don't know how you beat the establishment. You'd have to have a different establishment that is of the people. And unless that happens, like a true grassroots movement, then you can't beat the establishment. So direct people or impact people on a direct manner. That's what I would do. But what would you do?
I mean, I think the way to establish, no, not establish. I think the best way to, I don't want to say help the world. I'm going to just stick with America at this point. Because the world is crazy. So I'm just going to, America's crazy too. But I'm going to focus in on America. I think nowadays there's a lot of different ways to help with the political system and all types of systems. And I think the best way is just to think about like, the better position you're in and using all the channels that are used today. Like social media is a big channel. If you have a solid social media presence, you can talk to hundreds of thousands of people, millions of people very easily, very well. And it's the type of thing where I'm not going to say social media is the only way to do it. You can do it through, if you build a great business, right? You now have employees you can talk to, you can build relationships with, you can help them become a source of income for their family. I don't know, there's just so many different ways to impact communities in the modern day. And I would definitely say, social media is a big one. With social media, you can create a voice. And the awesome thing about it is anyone can do it. Anyone with a camera can immediately connect with whatever their followers is, or their friends on Facebook, or their, whatever thing they're using to express connection. Those are the things that are used today. And I think I've seen people who were in politics. I've seen people who were in business. I've seen people who were in different walks of life use social media to make these connections and influence those around them. I almost want to say social media is actually, you could argue, a better way to influence the country, because anybody with some sort of platform can talk. And I think, for the most part, I believe in what, the United States of America first implemented, which is the freedom of speech. This is almost from what the modern, just the modern age, this is the most modern form of freedom of speech, social media. Being able to talk and it go out to as many people as you can reach. Back in the day, in the 1700s, the founding fathers used to use aliases, and they would write letters. They would write letters to the people to express their dissent on things, to express their support of different things. And that's how people used to do, right? One of the very first things that revolutionized the world was I think it was called the Gutenberg press. Whatever was like the first type of instrument used to make books, or anything where you can kind of write things out and copy it over. Now we don't have to use that type of primitive force. We can literally just pick up a phone, talk, and if we have good points and people resonate with it, you can impact the world. And that's why there was, that one of the most common sayings is the pen is mightier than the sword. Well, now the pen has kind of turned into your voice. Your voice.
Your keyboard is mightier than the pen, which is mightier than the sword.
Yeah, and your voice on top of that, because now people are too lazy to write things down. Now people are just talking. They're just saying the first thing on their mind. And, while sometimes I know people can think that's scary because anybody can say anything, it's also a beautiful thing because anybody can say anything. People can finally express themselves exactly the way they want to. You see it even in sports. People don't have to, if a narrative gets spun about somebody, they can now speak out against it. Before in sports and even in the political arena, if something was said about somebody, and before social media, all you had was the mainstream newspaper, the mainstream television shows. But now people can literally, if someone says something false about you, you can pick up a camera and be like, hey, this isn't true because of X. I have the proof Y. Stop saying that about me. And that's very powerful. A lot of times you'll see something, a news article come out that'll claim something, and that person will have the evidence to be able to absolve themselves immediately. It doesn't always work like that, but that is a beautiful part of society today, in my opinion. So, and I know that kind of went on a tangent, but yeah, I think if you have the means, maybe being a political candidate isn't even the wave anymore.
I agree. I think that's an interesting route to go, but I completely agree with it, which is your voice individually means a lot more. I think the challenge is there's a similar challenge to the other one, which is how do you get your voice in front of enough people? Because you could argue there's another establishment, which is big tech, and then we can go. I mean, if we're going that way, I think there's bottlenecks or at least challenges ahead of however you want to go at, whether you're going the political route against the establishment, quote unquote, or if you want to have the freedom of speech and you're going against big tech, quote unquote. But if you can get your voice out there on media channels, I agree with you. Bottom line, that is the most effective tool you have today. Being a politician no longer is the most powerful position. Being a person of influence via your word getting shared amongst the people is the most powerful thing. But then I don't even want to go there tonight, but that's another topic, which is how do you get your voice out there when voices are being screened and censored by big tech?
I'm not against big tech. I love big tech. Big tech, if you're listening, love you guys.
I don't agree. Why would you say that?
Hey, I don't think big tech would ever censor me, right? Right?
No, they would. They do. I mean, I don't want to go down that route, but let's just touch upon it. You can't say everything you want to say.
Yes, you can.
No, you can't.
Yes, you can.
We can leave it there, but I'll go on the record saying you can't say everything you want to say today.
Big tech, if you're hearing me. You guys do what you can. You guys do what you can. All right. Are we going to the next subject, or was there anything else you want to say about? Is it worth it to be a politician, man? Last thoughts. Is it worth it?
It's kind of going a different route because we went on the influence route, but do you think that you could even be of influence in I know we talked about the establishment, but I feel like generally speaking, politics has become so divided that it's now two groups, and we've kind of touched upon this. The division between political parties as well as the groups within those political parties is getting wider too. So it's how can you even represent, a bunch of people if there's only two thought processes and they're getting further and further away? I know that's another question to dive into, but it's I feel like politics before you were why aren't bills getting passed? Well, today bills aren't getting passed because you have two people with polar opposite ideologies between Democrats and Republicans that they can't even come to at all a remote agreement on. Whereas I don't think it was always that way. And I was so first of all, you have this establishment. And then second of all, political parties are so divided. I don't think a politician can really get a lot done that way either.
I wonder if politicians hung out like if you made them have mandatory retreats, like companies, like
Yeah.
make countries that if you made these politicians go on a mandatory retreat, Republicans and Democrats, would they like talk more, hang out, and actually like find some common ground and be able to like work together more? Because I feel like a lot of times there's legitimate animosity, and I've heard that like during the '90s, like 80s, 70s, like politicians would be on polar opposites, but they'd still be friends. They'd still hang out, and there's a lot less of that today. Like, you know, if you took everybody and you made them go to like Aspen, you know what I mean, and you had like little party games, like companies, right, like water balloon toss or like three-legged race, and every three-legged race it'd be Republican, one Democrat,
Yeah.
Republican, one Democrat.
You force them to interact.
You know, you force them to interact. Like, how much more would they be friendly? Because you see them, they dig at each other. They have real animosity toward each other. Like, what if we made a law like that, right? You guys have to go on one retreat together every quarter.
Well, I mean, I don't think there's a law going to ever be made about that, but I do think it raises a bigger issue, which is when the divide starts growing. Don't you think it turns Americans against Americans?
Yeah.
Like, isn't the direction we're going right now, where Democrats and Republicans are getting wider and wider apart, where you said they might have disagreed back in the day, but they were friends, but now they disagree and they don't like each other and there's actual animosity. Like I'm gonna go on a side rant right now, but like serious questions to Americans. Like when you, and I'm asking all Americans this, but serious question to Americans. When you see something bad happen to a politician of the other side, Democrats to Republicans, Republicans to Democrats, something bad happens, a scandal or corruption or any of that, are you happy? Are you happy when you see something bad happen to the other side? Has politics gotten so divisive that you actually feel joy when something happens to the other political side? Because I feel like that's happened. When you see the past two presidents, so play it both sides, nonpartisan, I feel like Democrats were happy when bad things happened to Trump, and Republicans are happy when bad things happen to Biden. And it's like, I don't know, man. Controversial opinion, but you should be rooting for your politicians because you're rooting for America. Like, I want a strong president. I want a president that's successful. I don't want a president where I'm happy, regardless of their political party, when bad things are happening to them. And I think that politics has become so divisive. And there's been such, like, it's become this side, that side, that we've lost sight of, we're all Americans at the end of the day. Like, how can you not see there's bigger threats than the opposing political party? I don't know. I just think that when you see it how it is right now, people have put politics over America, and that's a bad recipe for success. You should be rooting for the best possible outcome for America, regardless of who's in charge. So, I don't know. That's a side rant, but when I see it happening, I don't get it.
Yeah. You know, raises a great point, my brother. That is a great point right there. We should be rooting for all of our politicians, you know, to do well for America.
For America.
You know.
Yes. They're corrupt. It's almost like you have to like start over again. And if you could get good politicians in there that we could all root for, that'd be a good thing. But right now, we have a bunch of corrupt people, so I get why people would root against them, but that's not the way it should be. We should be having good candidates that we all root for because that means there's a better America. Whereas right now we have an America where you're like, I hope the other side does bad so my side can get in charge. Where it's like, that's not how it works. You deal with what you get, but like, I don't know, man. It's bad.
It's bad.
It's bad. We have corrupt politicians and people rooting against them.
Yeah. Whenever a corrupt politician gets exposed on either side, the other side's like, look at those.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was saying. I would say most people feel a true sense of joy in their heart when something bad happens to an opposing party's politician. That's not good.
Never.
You may not agree with them ideology-wise, but if you're voting against them, like you're rooting that they have corruption and scandals so that you can say, ha, I told you so, that's bad for America. We don't want corrupt politicians. We don't want them having controversies. We don't want them having scandals. If it's happening, we need to expose it. But ideally, this wouldn't be happening on both sides.
Yeah. Ideally, we want Americans may have opposing ideas, but at the same time, like, we still have that camaraderie of we're all Americans and we want what's best for America and we want to make this country a better place. You know, it's never good when something unfortunate happens, whether it's a scandal, whether it's something to do with their family, whether, you know, some type of strife befalls them. You know, people on Twitter or, you know, people in the street, they're happy when they see the other side like fall. And, you know, as much as you want to say, oh, like that's shame to the other side, like it's shame to the other side. But if you're from the outside looking in, if you're from a different country, you're like, that's shame on America.
Shame on America. They're not
Which
looking at
affects
it.
everyone.
Outside of America, they're not looking at it as Democrat, Republican. They're looking at it as our nation versus America. And shame is shame, whether it's a Republican or a Democrat. And I genuinely mean this. If you are happy when you see things bad happening to the other political side, you need to check your heart and you need to check, like, what are your priorities? Because if you're genuinely happy about those types of things, you have officially prioritized party over country. And I don't care who you are. Regardless of my political stance, I choose America over any political party. I might align ideology-wise to one or the other, but I align to America over that party every day of the week.
And I think for the vast majority of Americans, whatever party they align with, they believe it's the best for America in their eyes, in their mind, right? Like, one party might think, oh, that party doesn't care about America because they believe this. I promise you, the other side, more than likely thinks the exact same thing about you. When in reality, we all want what's best for America. Hopefully, but it just might vary how they think that goal can be achieved, which is unfortunate, and hopefully things get better.
Hopefully things get better, and hopefully, I genuinely mean this, we can kind of start reversing course back to becoming more of a unified country. I don't think a divided America does better than a unified America, and I think the trend lately has been a larger and larger divide between Democrats and Republicans. And I think that if we go that route, it ends worse than if we found a way to start coming back together as Americans. Like, genuinely, regardless of your political orientation, you should be looking at the other side and saying, how can I come to a point of commonality, as opposed to they're evil, we're good, they're evil. Like, both sides look at it the same way, as opposed to, I don't think either side's evil per se. You just need to start coming back to common sense and commonality.
Yeah, I'm with that.
Hopefully, but who knows?
Just to let you guys know, we're about an hour in.
We're about an hour in? Dang.
Goes quick.
I feel like we just started.
But that was topic number 2. You want to get into topic number 3?
Yeah. We'll get into topic number 3.
This one could be...
I was going to say, this could be its own episode.
Let's focus in on this one, because I think we started this topic broad.
We be chopping it, man.
We be chopping it. But we started this topic broad, but I think that ultimately we need to focus in, and maybe we do this as a 2. Maybe we do this as a 3-part topic. But we talked about discussing education in America. And how do you want to narrow that down? Because I have stats, I have different education
I got a few things.
groups, but why don't you kick us off?
All right,
what
so
are your
I'll kick
thoughts
us
on
off.
education in America?
Education in America. I'm going to really focus in on one of my biggest ones. I have thoughts on all of it, but one of the things I kind of narrowed down on is like college, like undergrad specifically, you know, and I kind of want to talk about this because I've always felt like education should be a return on investment. Now, let me ask you something. I'm putting you on the spot this time.
Uh-oh.
What do you think education is?
You put me on the spot, and I'm thinking a lot, so I'm going to give you a quick answer and a long answer.
I had the actual definition because it'll be interesting. Because I had one thought of it, which
So-
is different than the definition. I want to hear your thought before I tell
So
you.
let me give you the ideological and the practical. The ideological definition of education is like the transfer of knowledge to make your society a smarter, more smoother operating society because everyone's more educated. So that's what I feel like education should be. The progression of your populace's like knowledge and thought sharing process. The practical, I think, is getting people smart enough to be able to contribute as much as possible to society, and feel empowered based on their knowledge of different topics. But where that might be way, way different than what you had. What did you have?
This is so interesting. So my thought, just in general, was like education is. I forgot. I didn't write it down. I should have wrote it down. But I remember before I saw this definition low key made me sick. But I thought education, like, and it's so funny because other people, like, no matter who, like, for the most part, people who comment, they're just like, well, you guys are boneheads. Education is X, Y, and Z. Like, shut up. You never thought about education before this. But I always consider, like, education is, like, facts that were essential to your well-being in the future to some extent, regardless of whatever, like, path you took in life. That's what I kind of thought. Let me tell you the definition. According to Google, the process of receiving or giving systematic instruction, especially at a school or university, a system of public education. That is the definition of education on Google. I said, give me the definition of education. That's what it gave me. So the process of receiving or giving systematic instruction. It's just very broad thing, and there's so many different types of education. And my thing is, especially for college. And here's the thing, like, growing up, especially us, like, we grew up in the 2000s/late 90s, where we were really indoctrinated with the thought of you have to go to college.
Yes.
You have to go. Like, I heard that in television shows growing up, like Nickelodeon, Disney Channel. I heard it in the classroom in elementary school. I heard it in middle school. I heard it in high school. My high school teacher was drilling it. You're not going to be able to do this in college. You're not going to be able to cheat in college. You can cheat in college. They lied to me.
Yeah.
They were just lying. They were just lying out their teeth. You know what I mean? They're like, taking IB, AP, that's going to make you get into XYZ college. Like, no, it's not. Everybody got into those colleges. Like, or it just depends on what colleges you went to. But that being said, they made you feel like college was so important. You could not make a living without college.
You were a failure if you didn't go to college.
Like, they had commercials where, I remember one commercial, and Eugene could probably pull it up at some point in a reel or something like that. But there was a commercial where it was like, there was this guy who was like, oh, let me pay you for something. And he brought out a wallet, and it was like a regular, or it was a super small wallet. And like, you didn't go to college? Like, no, I went to high school. I was like, dang. Like, it was like a small wallet. They were like, if you don't go to college, basically, like, you're going to be broke.
Yeah.
You can have a small wallet.
Yeah, 100%.
That's what they told you. So I was, I grew up feeling like, dang, like, I really need to figure it out. And for me personally, like, I didn't have a lot of guidance coming out of college. I didn't have a lot of guidance going into college, like through high school, in terms of like having two parents who were constantly telling me what I should learn in college, how to even like get into college. So, I ended up going to community college, and, I wasn't ready for college. I just didn't have the mindset of doing college. And I think a lot of people should have a college mindset when they go to college. My personal opinion, I'm not telling anybody what to do with their life. My personal opinion, I think you need to have the mindset if you're going to take college serious, because it's so expensive. And I'll just start off with some stats, and then you can go. But I looked it up. And so essentially, per year, average, college costs between $10,000 to $12,000 a year, right? And that's if you're going in-state. If you're going to one of these like private universities, it can cost anywhere between $20,000 to $30,000 a year.
And way more than that.
No, it was an average.
Yeah,
but it can be way more. It can go way more. Like, look it up. It's ridiculous. So, and that's just a year. So you go 4 years. Let's say you are very savvy business-wise, and, you're a young college student, and you figure out, I'll go in-state, and we'll go on the low side, $10K. And you go 4 years, you're 22. And that's if you don't take an extra year. I know a lot of people that don't finish college in 4 years. The percentage of people who don't finish college in 4 years is actually way higher than, maybe some older people might think. I know a lot of people who finish in 5 years. I know a lot of people who finish in 6. Like, it's not super uncommon for someone to not finish in 4 years. So, but let's just say it's 4. You come out of college, you are immediately in $40,000 of debt. Now that's assuming you don't have a scholarship or your dad or mom didn't pay for it. So that's most Americans. Unless most Americans are getting paid for it and I just don't know about it. But I would assume you're in $40,000 of debt. So then, and you know what? Let me also preface this. That statistic where I was saying 20 to 30,000, that was for out of state. My bad. Private college and private college universities, that's 50,000 a year. So
That's
kind of what was Taylor was thinking. So let's just say if you go in state, 40K after 4 years. Private university, 50,000 over 4 years. That's 200K. That's just undergrad. That's nuts. And so you graduate. The average salary for a recent grad in America is between $40,000 to $60,000. That's crazy. If you're thinking about just pure like business, you're taking completely the education part, the bias out of it. That's a wild investment. Hey, give me 4 years of your life. I'll give you a piece of paper, and you're not guaranteed a specific salary. Your average will be somewhere between $40,000 to $60,000, but you'll be $40,000, $60,000 in debt. So that means if you had no other expenses after 1 year, you may be able to pay other things off. But most people have expenses when they finish college, right? You're gonna have to pay your rent, especially if you're not living with your parents. You're gonna have to, which most people don't. You're gonna have to spend money for food. You're still gonna want to live. You still want to have to go out. If you have a significant other, you're gonna be spending money on dates. Spending money on the gym. You're gonna have a lot of expenses. Paying back your student loan debt from just undergrad on the low side of 40K, it's gonna take you quite a while. Imagine if you go to one of these private universities, and those private universities, they're not all like Harvard. Some of them are like no-name private universities that convince kids to go there, to play a sport or something like that. Now you're walking out of school $150,000, $200,000 in debt, and you're still making the same average salary that a lot of other undergrads get, which is 40, 60K. That is a mini mortgage, It's an insane thought. If you don't tell people it's for college, if you blindfolded someone and told them that's just a regular investment, no one would make that investment. That's just some light research. That's just the surface level of what I was kind of looking at when I was thinking about undergrad. But that is an insane proposition. On the flip side, let's say you didn't go to college. Let's say you went into a trade, right? So an average plumber with up to 4 years of experience is making between $50,000 to $70,000 a year on average. Imagine if you were making $50,000 to $70,000 a year for 4 years. Well, now you have two different individuals, 22. One spent 4 years getting $200,000 into debt, and one made $200K. Who's in a better position? If at that point they're both making relatively around the same amount of money. Who's in a better position? One could argue someone who didn't go to college is in a better position. So that is some light research, and that's just one trade. There's plenty of trades that make a lot of money after 4 years. So go ahead. I know I did a little mini rant, so if you wanna touch up on that as well.
It is so funny, and I swear this wasn't pre-planned that you did that, because I did the exact same process as you. I went through the numbers and I said, let me run. I'm a finance background. One of the concepts that when I had a light bulb moment in my life is what's the concept of a break-even analysis, which is basically just if you're going to compare two things, what is a better decision? And a lot of times it comes down to if you're saving money up front or if you're making more money on the back end, what's the break even? When does it start actually making sense that like it was the better decision? Is it better to save money and make less up front, or is it better to have a bigger investment up front but make more money over the long term, right? Basic concept, break even analysis. So what I did was I was looking, and I completely agree. It's so weird you said that. College degrees were literally preached. It was a message that was preached in the house. It was a message that was preached in school. It was a message that was preached in TV. Everything you just said, exact same thing, right? So we're all being told to go to college. So I looked up some stats. First of all, as how many people are going to college, right? In 1960, 7.7% of people had a college degree. In 2010, 28% of people had a college degree. And then in just 11 years, it went up to 35% of people 25 and older have a college degree. 35% of people 25 and older have a college degree in 2021. And I would argue it's probably even more so now. So we have indoctrinated America to say, get a college degree. So let's look at the numbers. Is a college degree worth it? And I think that using the old consulting, terminology, it depends. But let's just look at blank numbers and say, if you're not making a strategic college degree decision, does it make sense? So I had slightly different numbers than you, but very similar. So what I researched was the average annual cost of a four-year institution in 2020 was $16,618. The average total cost for a trade school is $17,600. Mind you, a four-year degree, you pay that $16,000 four times. A trade school is usually you can get it done in 1 to 2 years, and they said the total average cost is usually $17,600. So then what I said is, let's run a break even between that. So what is the average salary of someone in a trade school? I got $61,902. What is the average salary of a bachelor's degree? Is $74,464. So then I said, break even analysis. What is the cost difference between college and a trade school? Well, it's 4 times the $16,000 or your annual salary came to $66,472. And again, total cost for trade school, $17,600. I know it's a lot of numbers, but follow with me. What's the average wage difference? So we have $48,000 of the average cost difference. The average wage difference between a college degree and someone in a trade school is $12,562. So you divide those numbers, average cost difference versus average wage difference is 3.89 years. So it would take 3.89 years for someone who has a college degree to make up the difference in cost between what they paid to do it versus what they're making more out of it. So you say, oh, at face value, college, after 4 years, you're already in the green. You've made more than you would have had you had that degree. But wait, there's more. There's a 3-year difference between the trade school, which is on average 1 year, versus the college education, which is an average of 4 years, if that. So what it said is you have to add the wages you'd earn in those 3 years to the break-even analysis. So now the difference in cost is the $48,000 of tuition plus the opportunity cost of the 3 years making $61,000, which is $234,000 total. So a lot of numbers, but the bottom line is, if you were to take the total costs and opportunity costs of trade school versus the graduate degree program where you're taking on more debt, it now has a break-even of 18.78 years for that higher wage you get from college to actually cover all the costs that you missed out by going to trade school. So for all those people who are saying, oh, I make more money, I went to college, unless you're doing a passion area of yours or you're in one of the highest performing college degree sectors, realistically, they're selling you a pipe dream. It's not going to be 18 years till you break even compared to that trade school person, and that person didn't have to take on as much debt, and that person was working on their trade for 3 years, and that person has a more knowledge apprenticeship style, and they're making money at the same time. So I'm not necessarily against higher education, but I do think that they kind of lied to people about it's the best investment no matter what. I mean, how many people do you know who are overwhelmed with college debt right now? Is that not a problem in America? People dealing with college debt? Isn't that what they're trying to cancel and stuff? Why are we canceling it? It's because everyone got sold on it.
Think about also how many people have jobs in their mid to late 20s where they're like, damn, this isn't even my major.
Not even what they want to
This
do.
is not even my major, and I know people who didn't even go to college to do this.
Yeah.
Some people, they major in things and then they find out that like they make more money waiting tables.
Yeah. It's a
Being
thing right now.
bartender. Yeah, it's a thing.
And there's no debt.
Yeah, or they have to take on a second job because they're the thing that they majored in doesn't make enough money to pay their bills. So not just are they working a job in their major, but just to not just make ends meet, but also to live a little, they have to live a little less because they're taking on a second job. I definitely feel you when you say that like you feel like you were lied to, because I know like I've said this to many people before. If I could go back, I probably wouldn't want to. I probably would not have went to college. I probably would have taken up a trade, just because I know people who've picked up a trade, and even some people never even went to trade school. They just figured something out, stayed with the company. The company let them work in the trade, whatever the trade may be, and they make a good salary without having to have gone to trade school. And then some people went to trade school and their company even paid for it while they worked. So they were not just making money, they were getting their education paid for and building experience. I saw a video the other day of this girl who was in her car sick because she was saying that she had like a college degree. I don't know if it was business or marketing, but she wanted to make $200K right out of college, and she couldn't get any jobs to make $200K. And she was like, "What the hell?" I think she had like $60,000 or $80,000 in debt, and she was like, "The jobs I'm getting don't cover that." And it's like, duh, like that's what they told you in high school. They're like, you have to go. It's worth it. And listen, when you're 18, like you want like. People who go into college, like they kind of understand, like, okay, I'm gonna get into student debt, but they don't really, really understand it until they have to start paying it.
Think about how many people you know and I know that went to college and they had no idea what they wanted to do. They were like, "What's your major?" And they're like, "I don't know what I want to do yet, but I know I should be in college."
Yeah,
That doesn't make sense. Why would you commit to giving, call it $15,000 a year to get a degree when you don't even know what you want a degree in? That's a huge investment. They convinced people a college degree is so good for you that you should go and start giving them money to get it, even if you don't know what you want yet.
You know what's the funniest one? When you talk to a college student and they're like, "I'm majoring in, I don't know. I don't want to pick any major because whoever has that major is going to be sick."
Say it.
Oh, I don't know. Maybe like history, right?
Okay.
Like, "Oh, what do you do? What are you majoring in?" "History." And you're like, "Oh, cool. What are you going to do with that?" "I don't know."
Yeah.
they're like, "Oh no." I'm like, "You want to be a teacher?" Like, "No, I don't want to be a teacher." I'm like, "You don't want to be a teacher?"
They're just like, "I like history.
I like history. It's like really interesting."
I'll pay $60,000 to learn about something I like."
Yeah. And I'm like, could I Google that? Like, does your textbook have something that I can't Google? I don't know. Do any of those textbooks have things nowadays that you can't Google? Like,
Well, you want to know the funniest thing? I don't believe, even if you're going to college, and even if you're getting a degree in a field that requires a college degree per se, like it's a good college degree to go after, I don't think that you're learning how to do whatever job you get hired for in college. The amount of people I talk to that say the job teaches you what to do versus what you're learning in college, like college is almost more so you proving, are you capable of learning a topic and, sticking to it to get good grades? But the actual subject matter in college is not teaching anyone how to do a job. If you get an undergraduate degree in pre-med, you're not able to be a doctor,
Yeah.
If you're getting a finance degree, I had a finance degree. I didn't know how to go and get a finance job right away. I had to go to my job, and that was finance and cybersecurity, and they taught me how to do the job on the job. Nothing really of critical value was learned in the classroom that I took into my job and said, I am so ready for this opportunity. I am ready day one to step into it. They were like, all right, we'll teach you what to do. And I started doing it on the job. But nothing I did in college really, really gave me the skill set to walk in and say, he's an incredible employee.
I think a good exercise that high school should make you do, if you, like, first of all, they should probably ask high school kids, do you want to go to college? And if not, just make them kind of figure out what do you want to do, and then make them kind of think about like how much money that makes, and if that they're happy with that. And if you do want to go to college, look into like what major are you planning to major in, and then make them research what kind of jobs you can get with that. And then of those jobs, which one of those jobs makes them get more education, like a grad degree, and then how much the undergrad for that would cost, how much the grad for that would cost, and then how much do those professions actually make? Because I think there's a big disparity sometimes. Like I know I would see people graduate from college, and when they figured out how much they were really making, they wouldn't really dig into that stuff until their junior or senior year, and then be like, damn. And then maybe even switch majors, or just be like, you know what? I'm already X amount into this. There's no turning back. I'm just going to finish this and then deal with the repercussions. And then they either had to go work in something else, or they're just miserable at that thing. They were relatively happy sometimes, but a lot of times they're just miserable. It just doesn't make enough money, this thing.
I completely agree. And I'm going to say something that maybe I'll offend a group, but I'm okay saying it. I think in high school, I don't even know what the term is. What do they call them? Your advisor? Your
high school counselor?
High school counselors do a terrible job in advising you and counseling you. If they help you get into college, that's a big thing. But it's like they're not helping you analyze whether college is the right decision or not. High school counselors are one of the most inefficient groups that, based on personal experience and the experience of my peers, I have ever heard of. I don't know what they're doing with their job that is really preparing people for life, whether it's should you be going to college or should you be exploring another option. I think high school counselors are really a disadvantage to high school students, and it is a great concept to have someone counsel you as to how to go beyond high school, but they're not doing it. At least not in mass. Maybe there's a few good ones in there, but I'm not hearing of a lot of high school counselors that really put a bunch of people on the correct path forward for how they wanted to go into the next chapter of their life.
I never flunked out of college, but I did have years of college where I didn't do well. And I took a gap year in the middle of college to kind of figure out what I was doing. And I'll be honest, that year was very hard for me because I took really bad jobs. Not bad jobs, but jobs that really didn't pay all that well. But, it did teach me a lot of basic things that I think were important. And some people might laugh at this, but like I worked the cash register. I worked in a managerial position in a business. I spent a lot of time dealing with people. I had a supervisory type role. But as I was working this job and not going to college, and I had a lot of time to just kind of think of things and deal with, making money and not thinking about textbooks, not thinking about school, not thinking about partying. It helped me really analyze, what do I want to do? There's nothing like having a bad job to make you think about like, damn, how am I going to get out of this?
Yeah.
What am I going to do so I don't have to have this type of job anymore? It makes you scheme on making money. And I know I spent a lot of time thinking, okay, I'm going to go back to college, and this time I'm going to do things differently. This time I'm going to lock in and focus on, assignments, really study up on what kind of jobs are going to help me make money and help me build myself and my rapport. But I wasn't thinking like that when I was in college, because when you're in college, you're not really thinking about that. You're in a bubble. You are literally just reading textbooks. Like when you're in college, you're just dealing with ideas and theory and professors who a lot of times have never even worked in the field that they're teaching about. A lot of these professors, they're in elementary school, middle school, high school, college, grad school, back to working in the education system. They've never been in the field. They've never actually had to work in these professions. Some do, but some don't. And I think a lot of times the best way to learn in life is being in the field, working different jobs and learning what you do and don't like. And the other good thing about all these jobs is you're actually making money. When you're in school, you're in debt.
Yeah. I think I completely agree. I think ultimately the bottom line is, and maybe this is the segue to the next episode where we actually backtrack our way into this, but it's not a statement of whether a college degree is good or bad. It's just should you be going to get a college degree in the first place? And the problem then isn't the college degree, it's the steps of the education process to get you to that decision point. So I think maybe in the next episode, we talk about summarizing this is like my takeaway is that like, hey, you got to really analyze, is it a right way for you or not? Not every path from college forward is the right one. So clearly it's good for some things and bad for others. But how do you, and what's wrong with the education system where we're funneling people towards this and they're ill prepared for making those type of decisions? So I'm going to call it out now. This is episode 9.
Yeah.
Episode 10, we do a follow-up and say, what's wrong with the education system in the lower levels to not prepare people to know where to go after high school, whether it's to college or to somewhere else? Because clearly, my takeaway from this is that it's not black as white as everyone should go to college.
Yeah, I think I think we can definitely do that. But I also just want to say one thing so this is not left unsaid. I'm not saying college isn't worth it for anybody. There's definitely majors that are worth it to go to college that definitely have a great return on investment. You know, a lot of those STEM majors, you can come out of undergrad making anywhere between $80,000 to $100,000. And if you're going to an in-state school, the return on that investment is awesome. And you really are setting yourself up for success. But a lot of those majors are few and far in between, right? And there's many majors that don't. So I'm mostly focusing on the majors that really don't have that great return on investment, because that's the whole point, or that's supposed to be the point of education. It's an investment in yourself. And if the investment is not giving you a solid return, why are you making it? And I think that's what, at least I'm trying to challenge the narrative, right? Because the narrative has always been go to college, get an education, it's an investment. But at what point do you think to yourself, this investment just isn't worth it? The return doesn't justify the debt.
I agree.
Are we wrapping this up right now?
I think that I don't know a better way to end it than that.
All right, then.
And that lays up the next one.
It lays up the next one. Shout out to Pope.
Shout out to Pope. All right, brother.
All right, bro.